All right, so I've got Tommy here with me, and for today's segment, I wanted to talk to you about the next big man that the Lakers trade for to pair with Luka Doncic, maybe LeBron James. We kind of got a little sneak preview at the Lakers front office's mindset this past trade deadline in their pursuit of Mark Williams, but who else is out there this summer and beyond? And then something to think about. Philosophically, what types of big men do you think the Lakers should go for? Because I think after seeing what we've seen with small ball and this like fortress of forwards, I think the calculus has changed, at least for me, with regards to how we round out this roster with Luka Doncic. Like conventional wisdom says, yes, the one thing that we're missing is that 7 foot center, DeAndre Jordan, like Tyson Chandler type center. And while I would love to have that guy, I'm starting to wonder whether it's an absolute necessity. And as counterintuitive as it is to say, I'm also okay with a 6'9", like forward, like masquerading as a center, as long as that guy has motor versatility and defensive rebounding at the end of the day. But with that said, before I get into some specific names, let's like take off of the table the obvious guys that we've talked about ad nauseum, like Walker Kessler. Yes, of course, we would love to get Walker Kessler, so let's push him to the side. Miles Turner, we don't know what the Pacers are going to do with him. We would love to have Miles Turner. Let's push him to the side. And I'll even include Nic Claxton here because he's become more of a popular name for Lakers fans over the last, couple of weeks or months because Luka Doncic has mentioned him in a podcast before as like the perfect like lob threat and the fact that he's been impressed with him. So those are the obvious names that I kind of want to pull off of the tables to get some fresher ones in our mind. But before I go on with my list, Tommy, do you have any big men in mind that you're not sure whether we can get them, but like they have the type of skill set that you're looking for? And let's try to think more high caliber in terms of like, okay, Mark Williams didn't work out for the Lakers. Who would they then go after aside from Mark Williams?
Yeah, so I have no idea if this guy is available. He probably is not. But, to your point about kind of reassessing the archetype of center that might be helpful or that we might actually want to pursue. You're I'm was kind of thinking of who are guys who are sort of in that like Bam Adebayo like early stage of
Hmm.
their career where they're still developing, but they're clearly skilled. To your point, maybe a little undersized but strong. Um, we've talked about this guy before. And I don't know if he's available, but like somebody like an Onyeka Okongwu,
Hmm.
I think would be really, really interesting with this group. He's extremely athletic. He has speed. Uh, because of that, he has some switchability. I can't remember his exact measurements, but I think he's got pretty good length, although he's a little bit undersized and
He's got a 7'2" wingspan,
7'2"
6'9", 6'10",
wingspan.
7'2" wingspan.
And he's got a good motor on the glass. And I just feel like and he's got really good hands. So he's
Hmm.
like that's made him like a pretty good offensive weapon, playing off of Trey Young and collecting dump offs and things like that and finishing on those. So there's like enough to work there, and or excuse me, enough to work with there that I would be like interested in making an investment in like that kind of player and seeing what he could do if the Hawks decide to move on.
So you stole one of my names, but I'm glad you brought him up because Onyeka Okongwu is one of my like premier choices of another young big that the Lakers could go after if, and it's a big if the Hawks ever make him available. Because ever since he started in place of Clint Capella this season as the starter through 21 games, Onyeka Okongwu is averaging 14 points, 9.3 rebounds, 3 assists, and he's shooting 11 of 35 from three, 31%. What is this? And
Yeah.
60% from the field. Like, yeah, he is the next up and coming big. And for those reasons, it's probably a pipe dream. Um, but with that said, do you have any other ones before I continue?
No, 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 you can go
I
ahead.
really like that one. Okay, so I really like Onyeka Okongwu. He would be at the top of I think both of our lists because he's young enough as well. Hold on, how old is Onyeka? He's from USC. Let me just make sure.
I think he was the same age as like LaMelo. I'm pretty sure they were.
Shoot, this dude's only 24 years old. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I think he
Yeah,
played
so
at Chino Hills.
Oh, that's true, huh? And then
Yeah.
went to no, he did with Coach Steve Bake, and then he I think Bake coached his brother, and then he went to USC. Anyways, yeah, Onyeka Okongwu, awesome prospect. Now, in terms of let me go back and talk about some established names. I kind of wanted to rule out a lot of the pipe dream names, but now that we have Luka Doncic, I feel like we can't. So I'm just gonna throw them out to you. And if there was a universe in which they ever became available and would take like a package of Dalton Connect, even Austin Reeves in the 2031st first round pick, I'm gonna throw out some established like premier big man names to you. And out of this list, tell me who you'd be most interested in, because I know your answer will be anyone and everyone. But anyways, here we go. The pipe dream names of established big men. Bam Adebayo, who you just mentioned, Jared Allen, who's a little bit older, and Evan Mobley's kind of starting to take his spot. Maybe we can talk about Evan Mobley. And then Jaren Jackson is another name that Lakers fans like to toss around. Now, again, these are all pipe dreams, but out of this crop of guys, who would be like the one player that you would be most interested in pairing Luka with? Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, Bam Adebayo, and Jaren Jackson.
So putting aside practicality, because there's a few of these guys we have no shot at getting,
All of
and
them almost, but
yeah,
yeah.
pretty much all of them. And this one probably the most we have no chance. Evan Mobley, I think, would be
Mhm.
my ideal. We obviously have no chance, but I think that guy checks so many boxes defensively, and also he could play inside and outside as an offensive player. And I really, really love Evan Mobley's game.
Yeah, he's super versatile. He can pass the ball. It's funny. I just read off Onyeka Okongwu's stats. It's almost like a mini Evan Mobley, which is kind of scary. So yeah, he would be the premier pick for me as well. I actually think out of this list, the most realistic would probably be between Jared Allen and Bam Adebayo,
Yeah.
because, and I know the Cleveland Cavaliers are like running hot and all this stuff, but last year there was a period in which the fans and some pundits were wondering whether Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley would work together at all. There's like kind of a clunky fit there, but like if we were able to get Jarrett Allen, even though I know he's more on the, actually, I think he's like 26 years old, so he's not that old, but hold on, let me just double check. Yeah, he's only 26 years old. He's about to turn 27 in April. But yeah, if we were able to get Jarrett Allen as that like more consistent and established lob threat version of Jackson Hayes for Luka Doncic, I would love that. But yeah, I think we would say yes to all four of these guys to varying degrees. So let me move on to the next set of established names who are a little bit more questionable. Um, okay, let's talk about. I'll just list them all out to you, and you tell me who you like the most, or if you want to talk about all of them, you can as well. Rudy Gobert, Domantas Sabonis, DeAndre Ayton, what? And then Mitchell Robinson. He's only 26 years old, but I put him here because he's an established name who's like been starting. He just recently came back for the New York Knicks off of injury after being out all season. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Rudy Gobert, Domantas Sabonis, DeAndre Ayton, and Mitchell Robinson? You can tell me who you like the most, and then if you want to talk about anyone else, go ahead and do so.
I would probably, based on Luka and our current roster construction and the way it seems like we want to play, I'm just thinking about a plug and play guy. I think Mitchell
Hmm.
Robinson, for me is like if he can stay healthy, is the guy I would
Mhm.
take off that list. I think the issue, if you can get Gobert and he's at the right price, that's fine. I think Sabonis, I forget who was the other one besides those guys I just named. It was Sabonis, and then there was one other one.
DeAndre Ayton.
DeAndre Ayton, right? It's like those guys, like this sort of archetype where you're paying $30 million to a center who offers nothing on defense it's a very, very dangerous game to play. When you're investing that much into that position, if it's not Anthony Davis, even Rudy Gobert, that's why it's like I feel like any team trying to build around him, it's going to be clunky, even though he's an elite defender. Um, it, you know, it it just gets clunky. I think like Mitchell Robinson his salary is like at a level where it's sort of equal to his impact, and so You get the lob threat, you get the rim protection. I don't know that he does a whole lot else. And he's obviously had injury concerns. So those are the risks, but
Mhm.
I would roll the dice on those risks, certainly over taking somebody like Sabonis or even Aiden. Although Aiden, I guess I could be persuaded that there's another gear there that hasn't been unlocked.
Well, the thing that I'll say about Aiton is for 1 year at least, he proved that he could at least be the starting center on a NBA Finals team, right? He went to the finals with the Suns with Chris Paul and Devin Booker and Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges. That 1 year they went to the finals against the Bucks. So I'll give him that. It's just DeAndre Ayton has always been sort of like a player with a wavering motor who you're not sure where his mindset is at all times. And he kind of just wants to shoot jump shots and all this stuff and not do like the big man things. But yeah, he can get you 20 and 10 on a nightly basis. I think I agree with you with regards to on paper, if healthy, Mitchell Robinson gives you more of that defined meat and potatoes lob threat and defender who can protect the rim for you. Do you agree with me though that Domantas Sabonis is probably the most talented out of this group? Because I almost don't want to write him off because just imagine you always almost have to like keep in mind what Luka Doncic does to other players. And with a player like DeMontis, who isn't a defender, but is such a good passer, I'm almost like, what would we look like if we just amplified our passing to the nth degree at the center position as well? Where it's like, I don't does I know defense will matter, but will defense matter if you have Domantas Sabonis, LeBron James, and Luka Doncic? So that's the only thing I'll say about Domantas Sabonis, who he's also a tough player, right? Even though he is not the defender you want, Anthony Davis struggled against him, because he was pretty physical. And at the very least, Domantas Sabonis grabs boards, So I'm just intrigued by his. He's kind of like Luka Doncic at the power forward center position, is what I'm trying to say with Domantas Sabonis. So don't rule it out. All right, let's take it to break. And when we return, let's just talk about some younger players, younger, non established names, and then we'll close it out from there. Now, before we get back to some big man names, a quick word from our great sponsors over at Underdog Fantasy. Nothing beats March basketball. Bring the fun of a bracket to every game day by making entries on Underdog Fantasy. It's super simple to play. Just choose whether a player will go higher or lower on any one of their stats, points, assists, rebounds, and you're on your way. I've been using the Underdog Fantasy app all season for my NBA entries. It has a super intuitive interface that I think fans will find easy to follow. I'm happy to say that I'm up about $40 overall, and I haven't had to actually put in any of my own money because I've been using Underdog promotional money and made it work for me. And you can make all of this work for you as well by simply downloading the Underdog app and signing up with promo code LEGACY to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus credits when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with promo code LEGACY. Claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus credits instantly upon first deposit. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Void where prohibited. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, so we are back. Okay, I have two younger guys that I want to discuss who are considered more traditional centers. Onyeka Kongwu would have been one of them, but since you already talked about him, I'm left with two. So, Tommy, what are your thoughts on, and these are going to end up being more stopgap players, but what are your thoughts on Robert Williams, revisiting the Robert Williams scenario, and Goga Bitadze?
I would honestly be super happy with either of those two. Like Robert Williams, you're always rolling the dice on his health. And I realize I say that as Goga is like, I don't know if he's out for the season, but he is currently injured, I believe. But um, I think because Williams's game is so predicated on his athleticism, you always sort of have the lingering concern there that if he can't stay healthy, he's completely useless. The thing about, or if his legs aren't healthy, he's completely useless. Goga can run and never jump once for a 48-minute game and still be effective. Um,
Hmm.
it's you don't have the lob threat, so like Luka would have to adjust with Goga. I mean, obviously with Robert Williams, you certainly have it, but Luka would sort of have to adjust his deliveries, I think. But like I would take Goga like any day. I feel like he's one of these dudes that you flagged in the past as somebody sort of flying under the radar and could be had for a
Hmm.
cheap price. And, clearly somebody in the Magic scouting department identified that. And so they got super lucky to have him because the Magic, I think, are currently the number 2 defense in the NBA, even with all their injuries. And a big part of that was Goga anchoring a lot of that because they've had front court injuries too. So he stepped
Hmm.
up into a bigger role than they were expecting, and they didn't really miss a beat with him down there.
Yeah, I think you were mistaking him for someone else because he's been playing recently. Maybe he got banged up along the way,
Maybe,
but
yeah,
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 Goga has been like a rock solid like center option for them. 8 points, 7.5 rebounds. He's also got some pretty decent passing chops, averaging
yeah,
2 assists a game in only 22 minutes. 1.6 blocks, 0.8 steals. I've mentioned it in the past, but Goga can be. He's not as talented offensively. Actually, I don't know. I mentioned in the past, but I said Goga can be like a poor man's Ivica Zubats for you. You know, he's not necessarily going to be an elite aerial lob threat, but he can pretty much do everything else, and he can move bodies out of the way because he's so strong, and you know he's going to fight for boards, and yeah, he has that Marc Gasol type of defensive timing and awareness with his hands, being able to position himself for blocks that aren't necessarily volleyball blocks that'll be in Sports Center's top 10 highlights, but it's effective, 1.6 blocks again. So yeah, I would love Goga Batadze, and I would also love Robert Williams. He's kind of in the same boat, like health wise with Mitchell Robinson, where you're like, man, if these guys could just stay healthy, I would actually pick Robert Williams over Mitchell Robinson if they were both healthy and all things were the same, because Robert Williams is such a the way that he switches out on the perimeter, moves his feet, and then is able to erase shots at the rim. And then the way that he hammers these like alley oops down and these sledgehammer tomahawk jams, he's so explosive, Tommy, that people tend to forget that he's only 6'9". I will bring up other centers and people will be like, he's too short. He's only 6'8", 6'9". And then I go, did you know that Robert Williams is only 6'9"? And they're like, oh, really? So
yeah.
like that's how like domineering he is as a presence that people forget. He's an undersized center, but he does have a 7'6" wingspan, and he has so much lateral quickness and explosiveness that it is very terrifying to go up against. All right, with that said, my last 3 candidates, I'm going to talk about, speaking of 6'9" guys, I'm going to talk about smaller, undersized forwards who would fit the more unconventional route, but I think would still work. All of these guys come with caveats, but I'm going to throw them out to you and you tell me who you're most interested in or if you want to talk about them in tandem. All right. Wendell Carter Jr., also from the Orlando Magic. This was a popular name that Lakers fans love to throw around till the Orlando Magic signed him to an extension and he couldn't be traded this season. But Wendell Carter Jr., he's 6'9", 6'10" as well, but he's also versatile, can space the floor a little bit, rebounds the ball, has good length. And then another player that we've talked about. This one comes with major question marks and asterisks for obvious reasons, but Beef Stew, Isaiah Stewart. I do think that guy needs to go to therapy if he isn't already. He does have issues and problems, but he kind of fits the mentality that we have going for us. I think he might push us over the edge too much, but putting aside the mental issues and just looking at Isaiah Stewart's game and the motor and activity and the rim protection and all that stuff, Isaiah Stewart. And then lastly, this one's a weird one. Jabari Smith Jr. of the Houston Rockets. He's a little bit more of like a wild card and maybe I don't want to call him a reclamation project because he's still playing pretty well, but I think he's starting to get phased out in Houston by guys like Tari Eason and stuff like that. And he's missed some time this season, so maybe he's kind of just gotten lost in the thick of things. But he is a versatile power forward who can also play small ball 5, much in the same way that we have Vando, Rui, and DFS playing small ball five at times. But your thoughts on Wendell Carter Jr., Isaiah Stewart, and Jabari Smith Jr.?
So from this list, I think for me it would definitely be either either Isaiah Stewart or Jabari Smith Jr.
Mm.
I think Isaiah Stewart, you want to get rid of Trey Jemison in the scenario because they're going to start like a malice at the crypto arena or what, like those two
Practice.
guys. Something about, I don't know if I'm the only, like, I'm sure you feel the way. It just feels like Trey Jemison is always on the verge of like trying to choke somebody out in the middle of a
Yeah, but
game.
he does so like with a smile on his face or something. This weird handsome
It's
Squidward
weird.
guy.
Yeah, yeah, this handsome Squidward look that he's got about him. But yeah, yeah, we would need to adjust that signing. But Isaiah Stewart, I don't know that we have a chance to get him, but as the Pistons, who are making a really nice run this year and may make some noise in the playoffs with how well they've been playing, how hard they play, as they look to like sort of rejigger their roster moving forward to continue to get better. I mean, Duran is obviously the center of the future there. He's a very good. I mean, part of the reason I didn't talk about him is because we know he's not available because it sounds like Rob tried to
Yeah,
trade for
we
him
tried to
already.
get. Yep.
So like, we're not getting him. And Isaiah Stewart has been playing phenomenally for them this year, but when you're thinking about upgrading, he's one guy you might, try to move to get an upgrade because he has some real value. So maybe you have a chance. I think he would be a fantastic, fantastic fit at the five. And then Jabari Smith Jr., I've liked since his rookie season. I think his defense is like really, really underrated. And I think he has the ability to stretch the floor, or am I misremembering?
No, he does. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So
that's his main skill offensively. I think.
offensively, yeah. And it's like the way he gets the threes off too, it's not just completely standstill. Like you'll see him like catch and shoot, like taking, well, like kind of not on, like not like Kyle Kuzma, but not totally stationary like Kelly Olynyk either,
Hmm.
or like a Brook Lopez. So he's certainly got something to work with offensively. He was injured for like a couple months, and Tari Eason has been really good for them. So I think they're getting to the point where they have to decide on whether they want to pay Jabari Smith Jr. or not, and I don't think they've extended him yet. So that might be he might be somebody they are potentially looking to move. I don't know, but
Hmm.
I I I've always been a big fan of his, and I think he would make a lot of sense for this type of archetype.
And he has that like positional mobility and versatility that kind of seamlessly fits in with like our switching style of defense, being frenetic and all that stuff. And I don't know, and this is how we'll close things. I don't know if you're of the same mindset where unless you can get like Walker Kessler, like literally Walker Kessler or Robert Williams, I almost want to just allocate all of our resources to finding the 6'9" dude who can also play small ball five who won't get played off the court in the playoffs. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
making the Jackson Hayes, Goga Batadze, like beefier 7-footer come off the bench as our like BAE sort of center, where let's
yeah,
spend most of the money on, like, to your point, like a Jabari Smith Jr. who has potential, and the Mark Williams player, I don't really want to allocate $25 million to that guy. Let's find the backup version of that dude who plays for 15 minutes, gives us what we need throughout 82 games, because we know eventually in the playoffs, again, unless you're like Zubats or Walker Kessler, that dude's getting played off the court.
yeah. I think the modern NBA and the I'm not even talking about the way the game is played. I'm focused on the CBA when I say the modern NBA. Like it doesn't reward allocating significant chunks of salary to big men who are not that like Giannis, Anthony Davis, like that type of big man, like who can guard 1 through 5 and who can give you something offensively. Like, okay, if you want to commit significant dollars to one of those guys, that makes sense. But honestly, even Carl Anthony Towns, like committing 55, $60 million to that kind of player it feels like not worth it. It almost feels like, to your point, like you want the Jackson Hayes as like a 7-footer or Goga type of 7-footer option, But if you can get, kind of supplement that with another guy who's a little more versatile, certainly when it comes to like switchability on defense, I maybe you invest a little bit more there, as opposed to going all in on like a Miles Turner who might be played off the floor in the playoffs, or even a Naz Reid who, I don't know enough about him defensively to comment, but just given his size, I mean, you would imagine, unless he's like really elite, and I'm just not aware, that's somebody who could be played off the floor too. So I agree with the way you're thinking about this in general.
I would actually, I do need to watch more Nas Reed tape, but if he can hold up defensively, I would almost put him in the category of like Jabari Smith Jr.,
Mhm.
and like let's make him the starting center and then let's find our backup guy if it's Jackson Hayes or whatever. And I also wouldn't rule out, by the way, I feel like he's just like people forget about him because he's got a games cap and he's been playing in the G League. But like Christian Koloko is averaging like 4 blocks a game for the
Oh
South Bay
yeah,
Lakers.
yeah, yeah.
Like I want to just see him develop for us, because it's not out of the question that he turns into, like, especially if you're just playing him 15 minutes, into like a Nic Claxton proxy. I mean, Nic Claxton isn't a polished product. He just was given the starting center position and has been thriving in that position for the last couple of years now because he's been given that role consistently. You can't
Yeah.
expect consistency out of a player if they're never given that shot consistently.
I think
So I'm not, yeah.
yeah, I think the roster fits with AD were a little clunky to figure out because we had to play AD at the 5 to maximize his and LeBron's effectiveness. Or at least that's what we thought, right? AD clearly didn't think that, and maybe he was right. But you know, it- when you have a guy like AD who is going to take significant 5 minutes in the playoffs in any case, no matter how you play him in the regular season, it's hard to justify using 2 additional spots on centers, like, and so I think that's why we ended up in the situation we've had in, frankly, this season and in prior seasons where it was like we'd carry one other center other than AD on the whole roster. I think moving forward, that sort of paradigm shifts. I think, you know, we should expect, and I would hope that we have 3 centers. So if you have Koloko on a minimum contract next season, developing as your third option, getting minutes here and there, potentially a rotation player of the future. And then you have like a more established 7 footer, and then you have like a switchy guy. Like those would be the 3 types of guys I would be looking at when you're building out your sort of
Mhm.
center rotation.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of varying up their skill sets a little bit. Have a guy who can also space the floor. Maybe that's one of your starting centers, like we said, one of these undersized guys who's a little bit more versatile offensively. But yeah, the Lakers have some options. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I wouldn't be surprised if they go with a stopgap option first because their prime target doesn't necessarily materialize this summer. But yeah, it should be interesting to see. All right, that'll do it for this segment, this episode. Tommy, I will catch you later. Guys, follow us on X at Lakers Legacy Pod. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Lakers Legacy Pod as well. And hit us up with a 5-star rating and review on the Apple Podcast app and Spotify. And we will catch you guys next time. Tommy, see ya.
Peace.
Later.